one of the things that, one of the forms of mind control, it's called trauma-based mind control. What you do is you traumatize people. They want to take kids, ideally before the age of 6, and they put them through horrific trauma. They establish what makes the child ladies and gentlemen, what I'm just about to say, this is the mentality that was behind the lockdown and is behind what's happening now, the cult. They find out and establish what terrifies the child, and then they subject the child to it. They'll subject the child to watching an animal be sacrificed. They might, in the extreme cases, make the child watch a human be sacrificed. And what happens is that there's a mechanism in the mind which shuts away, basically puts behind an amnesic barrier horrific memories, so the conscious mind is not constantly reliving them. And they call these isolated fragments of minds memories, alters, as in altered states. And I've mentioned it before. What they then do is they program these alters with different tasks, like Manchurian candidates, etc. And they have what they call a front alter, which is the personality that seems to be the person that people interact with. But in the background, in the subconscious, are these other alters, which are programmed with certain behavior traits. It might be an assassination, it could be lots of things, honey traps, anything. And they have a word, a phrase, some kind of code that's hypnotically put into the mind, that when the person hears it, or even sees it, it can be a symbol, the alter that relates to will become the front alter. And the front alter will go into the subconscious. Now this alter, which has a completely different perception of reality to the front alter, which seems to be the normal personality of the person, will then carry out its programmed task. And one of the massively common ways that this is used is for very famous people to have sex, and sometimes horrific sex, with girls and women under this mind control.
Epstein's been exposed and he's allegedly dead. How many of his friends that were frequent visitors on his sex trafficking island were also involved in the rape, torture, and trafficking of children?
Because what happens then is, after it's happened, they bring the front alter back and they put the alter that's experienced, like the sex abuse or whatever, into the subconscious mind. The front alter's back, it has not experienced the sexual attack or whatever the behavior is, therefore knows nothing about it. Where I'm going with this is, the word they use to activate the alters and the switch is trigger. Someone's been triggered. Now you look at the woke psychology. What are they saying all the time? I've been triggered. They're putting things in educational documents and what have you, called trigger warnings. That something you might not like is coming up. Trigger warning. That I'm even seeing in the collective war on the human psyche, the language of mind control that they've been using for decades and decades. And so one of the expressions, and very relevant to today, of this mind control, what they call trauma-based mind control, is that when someone's traumatized, in a state of anxiety, in a state of fear, they become massively suggestible. This is why they use trauma as part of the mind programming. So what they're doing to humanity as a whole is producing reasons to fear, reasons for trauma, reasons for anxiety. And when they've manipulated people into those states, they then put the mind control suggestions in there of that change perception.
This is happening to all of us right now.
Right now. So, for instance, if you get someone, and a lot of people watching this will have seen this in their own experience in the last few months, if you get someone so traumatized about a deadly virus, they become absolutely open to hypnotic suggestion, because this cult is not really targeting the conscious mind overwhelmingly, it's targeting the subconscious mind, which then filters through to become conscious perception. They put the suggestions in and change people's psyche. And this has worked to such an extreme that cancer doctors and other people in the specialists of heart disease and what have you. I mean, I remember a line from a British cancer specialist when he's saying how the lives of so many people are going to be significantly shortened because of the lack of treatment and diagnosis during the lockdown. He said people are more frightened of COVID-19 than they are of cancer. Now, this is what happens when you get people into a traumatized state and then you put the suggestions in. You completely, you basically hypnotize them. What's happened is that so many people in the last few months have been put under a hypnotic spell. And indeed, people are put through a hypnotic spell their entire lives. You go through the education system and then into the world of, where the media is telling you everything that you should believe and everything that's real and what have you. It's a hypnotic spell that's being cast on the human race. And when people talk about people waking up, what does that mean? It means they wake up from the trance. They wake up from the spell. And so I meet so many people because of what I do who say, oh, I read your book, or I saw you do this, or whatever. And suddenly I just saw it, I just got it. And what do they say? I woke up. It's exactly what happens. When you can put out information that's putting a different angle on everything, what you're doing is breaking the spell. Because the spell is basically all that anyone's ever heard. All mainstream sources, they're all sources of the spell. And when people hear other sources of information and other ways of looking at the world, it breaks the spell. And people say, I woke up. Yeah, you woke up from the trance that you've basically been put in since the day you were born.
Claimed to be a conspiracy theory. And by the way, the term labeling people as conspiracy theorists was invented by the CIA to deflect any attention over the JFK assassination. They invented that word as a way to shut down any scrutiny or just critical investigation of what they were doing. So they started that whole ball rolling.
The CIA was seeking a new weapon aimed not at the body, but at the mind.
There was continued pressure put upon anybody within the agency in connection with trying to explain or understand brainwashing. So we were charged with rather an elaborate attempt to try to find out chemical, psychological, any kind of means that people could use to influence the behavior of the people.
The LSD was really horrifying, very horrifying, and they gave it to me for about 12 or 15 times. One minute I would see the doctor there, the next minute I wouldn't see him there, and they were asking me all kinds of questions, and I remember them telling me that I was getting smaller and smaller, and I really felt myself getting smaller. And they were bringing me back in time, way back, you know. At one point I almost felt like I was just about to be born, really, that far back in memory. And they were really, really probing, asking all kinds of questions, and I felt I didn't have any control. I had to answer. I didn't feel I had any control. I was completely, like they had complete control over me.